I played MegaMan Battle Network tutorials for over 6 hours, and some of the things I found broke my brain. To put it another way, I discovered some of the weirdest secrets in the series, and most of them are found within the first 10 minutes of the game. A while ago, I showcased the rarest preset folder in the MegaMan's Battle Network series, and that got me thinking, what exactly is in the tutorial folders? I wasn't even sure if they were actually folders to begin with. Most tutorials bend the rules slightly to showcase a specific aspect of the game, whether it's the basics or a new skill. There was a decent chance that, if we continued through the tutorials past the expected endpoint, it could continue on forever. So I sought to answer that question. Would the chips continue forever in an infinite loop? Or do they have a finite end like all other folders? I can confirm, definitively, that these tutorials do not last forever. They do end after you draw 30 chips, and they are preset folders just like all the others in the game. Through my research, I found 25 new folders across the main 10 games that have never been outlined before, and 23 of these completely break the folder building rules the player has to follow. This means you only had one chance in each playthrough to use these folders that you can't recreate later. I double and triple check these to make sure that everything I'm sharing with you now is accurate. Of course, for most of them, you can verify it yourself just by hitting New Game. For full transparency, I use the MegaMan Battle Network Legacy Collection versions of every game I'm highlighting today. But based on the collection's faithfulness to the originals, I'm certain my findings can also be found in the Game Boy Advance games. We're going to deep dive into all these folders, compare them to the folder making rules that you have to follow, and analyze other parts of the tutorials that I found interesting. So drink some water, do your stretches, and let's get started.
Oh look, Ditto wants you to support on Patreon. Every early game tutorial follows the same basic pattern. First, it teaches you how to use multiple chips together by forcing you to use 2 cannons. Then, multiple chips of the same code by forcing you to use area grab and Y sword. And finally, the game's extra mechanic. This is either the add button in Battle Network 1, 2, and 3, or the emotion window in 4, 5, and 6. Folders in the early game tutorials try to emulate the folder you're given by default. In other words, the chips you see in the actual tutorials can also be found in your actual starting folder, most of the time. But once you go past the tutorial scenes and dig a little deeper, you'll find some weird things hidden underneath. Spoiler alert, Battle Network 1 is the most normal out of the 6 games, but that still doesn't mean they're not weird. Battle Network 1's folders have very few restrictions. You're allowed to have up to 10 copies of a battle chip in your folder. Yep. If you want to use a folder of 10 swords, wide swords, and long swords, you can. The only other restriction is on Navi chips. You can only have 5 Navi chips in total, but they can be the same Navi chip. So while you can't have 10 copies of base, you can have 5. And yes, it is possible to have multiple copies of that in a single game. The first tutorial shows us how to use multiple copies of the same chip. Trying to use the add button will have Miss Mari tell us to wait. That seems normal. What's not normal is that you can select any chip and the tutorial will let you. In other games, you're asked to cancel and select cannon, and truthfully, you can start the battle with no chips in this tutorial and the game won't stop you. If you happen to lose in any of Battle Network 1's tutorials, Ms. Mari will prompt you to start again. Also, fun fact, these 3 tutorials are the only tutorials to take place on a boss stage, specifically Numberman stage, who is the second boss in the game. Now for the actual folder. Like we said before, you can have 10 copies of a chip. So, pop quiz. How many copies of cannon do you think are in the first tutorials folder? I'll give you 3 seconds. If you guess 10, you'd be so close. The answer is 12. Yep. We're not even 5 minutes into the first Battle Network tutorial in the entire series, and we've already broken the rules in half. Here's a breakdown of every chip in Battle Network 1's first tutorial folder. We have our 12 copies of Cannon A, 6 copies of Mini Bomb L, 6 copies of Shotgun N, and 6 copies of Crossgun J. As we review these tutorial folders, I'll also outline the order that these chips appear. If you think about battle chips like cards in a deck, essentially, every time you start a battle, the deck is shuffled before you're dealt your starting hand. But in these tutorials, the deck is stacked. In card games, this means that the deck is arranged in a specific order, and that order will not change. Every time you play these tutorials, you'll always draw the same battle chips in the same order. So Tutorial 1's order is as follows. Cannon, Mini-Bomb, Cannon, Shotgun, and Crossgun. Repeat that order 6 times, and you have the first folder. This kind of pattern is pretty common in the series, but there are still some oddballs here and there. Time for Tutorial 2. This is the tutorial where you learn about chip codes, starting with the classic combo, Wide Sword and Area Grab. Steal. It gets renamed to Area Grab in the next game onward. This time, you can't pick any chip you want. You have to pick the combo in order to proceed. If you choose the wrong chip data and try to enter the battle, the game will play the audio as if you started the battle, but it will still force you to cancel out. And since we have multiple copies of Steal, and panel stealing is permanent in this game, you can do this. Tutorial 2's folder follows this order. Steal, Wide Sword, Cannon, Shotgun, Mini-Bomb, and that repeats 6 times. That means we have 6 copies of these 5 chips. And since you can have 10 copies of each chip in your folder, you can actually recreate this folder in-game, unlike many of the other folders we'll see soon. So far, nice and simple. The next one is not so simple. So, you know how I said that these tutorials break the folder building rules? Tutorial 3 actually follows the folder building rules, but it breaks the tutorial structure rules. We'll get to that in a second. First things first, the chip folder. Here's a list of every chip you can see in this tutorial. Interestingly enough, this features the escape chip. This is strange because escape will fail if you try to use it during story battles, including tutorials, but it's fun to try. Fun fact, Area Grab and Escape are the only time-freezing chips to appear in tutorials. Battle Network 1's recovery chips are also time-freezing in this game, but not in others. And out of these, Area Grab is the only time-freezing chip to appear in at least one tutorial folder in every game, specifically the second tutorial. But back to Tutorial 3. In Battle Network 1, we learned about the Add button, which adds more chips to the custom screen, but you'll have to go a full turn without using chips. Since the folder has such a wide variety of chips, and many of them are in different codes, I actually had to go back and recheck all of them because I couldn't verify the codes from my footage. As you can see here, Battle Network 1 lets you have up to 15 chips in the custom window, but you can only see the codes if you hover over them. This is drastically different from other Battle Network games, which only allows you to have 10 chips, but you can see all their codes at all times. When I rechecked this tutorial, I noticed something. The tutorial's cards are not stacked. Every time you start this tutorial, you'll have a completely different set of chips in your starting hand. In this game, the Add button can be used by itself without picking any chips, so the chip order technically doesn't matter. I doubt most people notice this because everyone tries to speed run through tutorials so they can play the actual game. And honestly, I didn't even notice this, and I played through every tutorial twice at minimum. Anyway, like Tutorial 2, you can actually create the Tutorial 3 folder in Battle Network 1 if you feel inclined. Sadly, that's not the case for the rest of the series. Battle Network 2 revises the folder system and makes it less, insane. This time you can have only 5 copies of a chip in your folder. Once again, you can also use 5 Navi chips in a folder, and you can use as many copies of the same Navi chip as you want. A quick note, for our purposes, we're only going to discuss the base rules for folders. So while yes, you can use team style to increase the Navi chip limit, it's not going to count here. This is mostly because Battle Network 2 and 3 only have tutorials at the very beginning of the game, well before style change is unlocked. The rest of the games do have tutorials for their transformations, but none of them affect folder building. That said, I will now confirm that no tutorial folder has any Navi, Mega, or Giga chips in them, so that doesn't come into play anyway. As we were saying,
if you lose during any of the tutorials in Battle Network 2, they'll all give the same loss message. It seems to be pulled from Battle Network 1, although it adds an extra line, probably just for a little bit of extra encouragement. The folder itself is fairly straightforward. 12 cannons, 6 mini-bombs, 6 shotguns, and 6 B-guns. And even though this folder is very close to Battle Network 1 setup, this is a fully illegal folder. Every chip here has more copies than is allowed by the game. As we just noted, the maximum is 5, and the fewest number of chips here is 6. For those keeping track at home, Canon currently holds the record for the most copies of a chip in a folder, and this folder also holds the record for fewest unique chips in a folder with 4. Although Battle Network 1's tutorial folder has 4 unique chips in it, so right now they're tied. Anyway, back to Battle Network 2's first tutorial. The order the chips appear is cannon, mini bomb, cannon, shotgun, and B-gun, repeated 6 times. And yes, you can use the add button successfully after the second turn, so you can showcase 10 of the 12 cannons on the same custom screen. You'll have to waste 2 of them during the actual tutorial section, but that doesn't make it any less satisfying. Next up is the area grab tutorial. The order for this folder is area grab, wide sword, cannon, shotgun, and mini bomb, repeated 6 times. And unlike Battle Network 1, area grab does not last forever in this game, but since it does give you 6 copies, you're able to do this. Onward to tutorial 3. The last tutorial teaches you about the add function again, but this time, it's a little more involved. They explain that you'll have to discard chips and go a turn without any, and when they write without, they use the abbreviation W/O for one of the rare abbreviations in the series for a non-item word. Anyway, this time you have to select specific chips to use the add button. If you disobey and try to do another action, it'll prompt you to take all 3 recovery chips and press add, regardless of what you do. Now for the actual folder. There's way more chip variety this time. Let's start by going over the order they're stacked. First we have Recovery 10L, Recovery 10A, Recovery 10L, Cannon B, and Shotgun. Then we have another Cannon B, a mini bomb, Cannon A, V-gun, and a wide sword. After these 10, we have Shotgun, mini bomb, Cannon A, V-gun, and wide sword. This last set of 5 is used an additional 3 times, so here's the official breakdown. It's interesting that the Cannon B chips are only found at the beginning. The rest of the cannons in this folder are Cannon A's. Also, the only recovery chips in this folder are the first 3 that you initially discard. Funny part about this folder is that you can almost replicate it in the series. The only thing that tips it over the edge is the additional 2 cannons. Everything else stays at or under 5 copies. Time for battle number 3, and this game has one of my favorite folders. Battle number 3 completely reworked the folder system, and honestly for the better. Most of these changes would last throughout the rest of the series, and even into MegaMan Star Force. But the following requirements only apply to MegaMan Battle Network 3, 4, and 5. Chips are now broken up into 3 classes, Standard, Mega, and Giga. Under normal circumstances, you can only have 4 copies of a standard chip in your folder. Mega and Giga chips are new to the series. Mega chips are blue bordered chips that effectively take the place of Navi chips in Battle Network 2, although there are some non-Navi Mega chips too. You can only have 5 Mega chips in your folder, and only 1 copy of each. But while you can't have 3 copies of Gutsman B3 in your folder, you can have a copy of Gutsman B1, Gutsman B2, and Gutsman B3. It's a slight loophole that doesn't really amount to much, but it's there. Finally, we have Giga chips. These are red bordered chips that are deemed so powerful that you can only have 1 Giga chip in your folder. If you're somehow able to add more Giga chips to your folder, you can still only have 1 copy of the same chip. So, no double folder backs. Now on to the actual tutorials. This game's tutorials are the only ones that take place in a square or homepage that isn't lands. In this case, it's Scilab Square. I also found this little bit of trivia by accident while I was preparing to record. During the scene where you go to jack in before the tutorial, if you wait about 5 seconds without doing anything, MegaMan will automatically prompt you to press the R button again. I knew it happened when you pressed the wrong button, but I didn't realize it would continuously happen by itself. Most of these tutorials have different dialogue prompts, each getting progressively more... what's the word? Aggressive? Also, in every tutorial in this game, you can attempt to run away starting from the second turn, but you'll always fail. Attempting to use the add button will once again tell you that you'll learn about it later, but you can still use it on the second turn. Now for the actual tutorial folders. For tutorial 1, actually, we'll come back to this. Let's go over the other two first. Once again, if you try to enter the battle with no chips, it'll prompt you to cancel a B, even though that does nothing. You can also area lock the opponent, but like last time, it's only temporary. But once again, you can do this. Here's the fun part about Battle Network 3. The last two tutorials use the exact same folders from Battle Network 2. Even the order and chips are stacked is exactly the same. In Tutorial 2's case, it's Area Grab, Wide Sword, Cannon, Shotgun, Mini Bomb, repeated 6 times. And in Tutorial 3's case, it has the convoluted order leading with 3 recovery 10s. So you're probably wondering, why do we skip Tutorial 1? Because out of all the weird things I've found in these tutorials, this is the weirdest one. Based on the other two tutorials, you'd expect Battle Network 3's first tutorial to have the same folder as Battle Network 2, right? Almost. 29 of the chips are the same. But instead of a V-gun, another chip takes its place. This last chip is another cannon. That makes 13 cannons. 2 of them are used during the tutorial. 12 of them are A code, but the last one is in a completely different code. Try to guess which code it is. For reference, here's a list of every code cannon can have. I'll give you 3 seconds. The code of this final chip is cannon P. P as in penguin. That's just weird. Out of the 6 codes that cannon has, P isn't one of them. And in the first 3 Battle Network games, all chips have 6 codes or less assigned to them. This means Cannon is the first and only battle chip to have 7 different codes in the same game. This seems like it was a mistake, but at the same time, it almost feels like it was an Easter egg. I mean, how many people are going to play through a tutorial for 5 minutes just to dig up all of these chips? Cannon P is the last chip to appear in this folder, and since tutorial folders are stacked, it will always appear at the bottom. Well, we did it, guys. We found the secret battle chip that's been hidden for over 22 years. But anyway, Cannon P seems to be an oversight since Mini Bomb and Shotgun each have 6 copies, while V-Gun only has 5. V-Gun also shares the P code with Cannon P, so it looks like this cannon was also intended to be another V-Gun. I expected to see some oddities here and there, but I didn't expect an outright glitch. Anyway, let's move on to the second half of the Battle Network series, starting with Battle Network 4. Now that we're on the second half of the series, a couple of changes take place. First, this part of the game has patch card, but if you have a patch card equipped, the early game tutorials will just outright ignore it. MegaMan will always use his default stats, 100 HP and a level 1 Mega Buster. In Battle Network 4, each run and lost prompt is also different. The lost prompts also get increasingly more irritable. And in typical Battle Network 4 fashion, these tutorials have some typos. Now for the folders. Once again, they're fairly standard. The first tutorial showcases 12 cannons and 6 copies of Mini Bomb, Sword, and Recovery 10. They appear in the following order and repeat 6 times. Next, we have Tutorial 2. Interestingly, they decided to add Recovery 10 again here. I guess they want you to think more about support chips? Anyway, we have our standard combo of Area Grab and Wide Sword, followed by a Cannon, Mini Bomb, and Recovery 10. Repeat that set 6 times, and you have the entire folder. And yes, you can finish the battle with Area Grab again, and yes, you can do it in every Area Grab tutorial, but I forgot to do that from here onwards, so I'm sorry guys, I failed you. Now we get to the full synchro encounter hit tutorial. This tutorial replaces the add function from this game onwards. It emphasizes the emotion window and encourages you to use your chips to land a counter hit. But you're not actually required to use chips here. You can jump into the battle without selecting any, and the game will let you. Seems like this tutorial took more of a passive approach. Like they're saying, we're gonna tell you about full synchro, and if you want to use it, hooray. But if not, you do you. It's also worth pointing out that this tutorial starts you with 2 air shots. Air shot has the fastest reaction time in the game. Once you press A to use it, the attack will fire, and if you time it right, you will land a counter hit. It makes perfect sense why they added it to this lesson. The stack order is cannon, air shot, sword, air shot, and mini bomb repeated 6 times. That makes for 6 copies of cannon, sword, and mini bomb, and 12 copies of air shot. That also makes this tutorial the first tutorial where cannon isn't the most abundant chip. Air shot is now standing at 2nd place for the most copies of a chip reward, just losing to cannon by 1, thanks to Cannon P. But that's about to change. Welcome to our first transformation tutorial, and our first version exclusive tutorial. Beginning in Battle Network 4, each game has at least one of these, and that naturally means they have their own folders. The tutorial for Double Soul is pretty straightforward. The game forces you to use the correct chip and then press the Unite command. In Aqua Soul's case, it's Bubbler, and in Gut Soul's case, it's Crackout. If you press OK without any chips, Lan's dad will tell you to cancel and select the correct chip even though you can't. Trying to run away on any turn will have dad telling you to continue. And when you lose the battle, Lan simply says to try again. Aqua Soul's tutorial stands out because of its chip order. Like most other tutorials, it copies the first set of 5 chips 6 times. In Aqua Soul's case, that set order is Bubbler, Bubbler, Mini Bomb, Bubbler, and Recovery 10. Yep, Aqua Soul's tutorial has 3 copies of the same chip in one turn. Multiply that by 6, and you have 18 copies of one chip. You'll also notice there's only 2 other chips here. That means Aqua Soul's folder breaks 2 records. It has both the least unique chips in the same folder with 3, and the most copies of one chip with 18 bubblers. And it's pretty fun to fire off 5 bubblers in a row. Spoiler alert, this is the only transformation tutorial that has a recovery chip in it. That seems to foreshadow Aqua Cross's powers. As we move into Gut Soul's tutorial, you'll notice a drastic difference between the 2 folders. Aqua Soul has significantly more Aqua chips in its folder. While the last tutorial had 18 copies of an Aqua type chip, this tutorial decided to take the exact opposite approach. The Crackout chip used for this Double Soul is the only copy of its chip, or any panel crack chip. The rest are cannon and sword type chips, specifically sword, wide sword, and long sword. Yes, you can use life sword in this tutorial. A few things about that. 1. This is the first and only tutorial where you can use a program advance. 2. It's entirely possible to create this program advance before you obtain longsword, since that chip is optional in this game. 3. This tutorial is the only time in the game you can use a program advance 5 times in the same battle without using your Dark Souls auto battle data. Since you can only have 4 copies of a chip in your folder, you can normally only use 4 copies of sword, wide sword, and long sword at a time. This is the first and only time since MegaMan Battle Network 2 where this was possible, since starting in Battle Network 5, each program advance can only be activated once per battle. And finally, number 4, I didn't verify this part, but if this is the first program advance you formed, it's entirely possible that it can activate the Legacy Collection achievement for using a program advance. Also, Crackout is the first star code chip used in a tutorial folder. Did you notice that? I almost didn't, but yes, those air shots from before were in the A code, which is a weird choice. Anyway, the order for this tutorial is unusual. For the first time in a while, we start out with Cannon A, Cannon B, Sword S, Crackout Star, and Long Sword S. After that set, we have Cannon A, Cannon B, and Sword S again. But this time, instead of Crackout, we have Wide Sword. This is followed by another Long Sword, and that set repeats for a total of 5 times. Ironically, if Crackout wasn't there, we could have had 6 Wide Swords, which means we could have used the same program advance 6 times. Not even Battle Network 2 would let you do that. With the number of sword-type chips in this folder, it almost feels like Proto Soul was going to be a tutorial soul, but there's no actual proof of that. Still, it's pretty funny that we have 12 cannons in a folder this late in the game. Battle Network 5 time. So, earlier I mentioned the rules for building a folder in Battle Networks 3 through 5. I like to add something here. Besides the restrictions on standard Mega and Giga chips, Battle Network 5 also adds dark chips to the mix. Unlike Battle Network 4, you can add dark chips to your folder, but you can only have 3 dark chips in total, and you can't have multiple copies of the same one. That doesn't matter much because none of the tutorials we're covering involve dark chips. So, now for the actual tutorials. Losing in any of them will cause our duo to say the same thing for all 3 battles. Meanwhile, trying to run during the tutorial shows there's a virus on the webpage. This is no time to run for the first 2 battles, but the third one is weirdly different. But if you try to run away in the second turn onward for any of these tutorials, MegaMan will give the same generic prompt that appears in nearly all story battles. I'll breeze through the actual folders since you probably see the pattern by now. In Tutorial 1, the order is very neatly Cannon A, Vulcan 1, Cannon B, Sword, and Mini Bomb repeated 6 times. Once again, we have 12 cannons. There's 5 chips in total, 4 if you count both cannons together. Tutorial 2 features Area Grab, Wide Sword, Vulcan 1, Cannon, and Mini Bomb repeated 6 times. Unfortunately, Area Grab dissipates faster in this game, but you can theoretically end the battle with 6 Area Grabs, like all the ones before it. Finally, we have Tutorial 3, which focuses on counter hits again. Like before, it features Airshot, but unlike before, the code isn't A, it's Star. Even though the Star code was introduced in Battle Network 2, this is the first early game tutorial to have a Star code chip in it. As mentioned before, Crackout has the honor as the first Star code chip in any tutorial. This time, the counter hit tutorial also has Vulcan 1, which truthfully is a pretty good addition. It's a multi-hit attack that's pretty easy to use to land counter hits. I personally have more success getting full synchro with Vulcans than I do with Airshots. Anyway, the order we have is Cannon, Airshot, Airshot, Vulcan 1, Mini Bomb, repeated 6 times. And once again, that means we have 12 Airshots in one folder. Next, we have our 2 Double Soul tutorials, which... okay, I need to say something about these next 2. There are so many cutscenes before these tutorials. For reference, the last moment you control the player before the tutorial starts is the second liberation mission against Shade Man, like literally right before you fight him. From the moment you defeat Shade Man in Orin Area 3, you watch the cutscene where you get Double Soul, the cutscene where you say goodbye to your Defense Navy's operator before leaving on the boat, a cutscene where Dr. Regal expresses his frustrations and summons Cloudman, a cutscene with your friends in AC/DC Town, which is also where you meet your Traversal Navy's operator, the quick cutscene near AC/DC Park before you jack into the squirrel, and finally, the cutscene where MegaMan announces you got the Double Soul tutorial email from your team leader. That is 6 cutscenes before this mandatory tutorial. Casual players and even speedrunners probably didn't notice that, but since I was actively searching out these tutorials, it was thrown right in my face. This is especially true since I actually messed up and accidentally won the battle before I finished documenting everything. The funny part is that right before the tutorial, Lan says, "I'm in a rush, but I can't pass it up," which is basically the sentiment of the day. As we were saying, so we have Magnus-Soul and Night-Soul as our Double Soul tutorials in Team Proto-Man and Team Colonel, respectively. Losing in either tutorial will have Lan tell MegaMan to try again. As expected, Chod and Barrel won't let you do anything until you pick Thunder or Airhawk, and then the Unite command. Trying to run away in Team Proto-Man shows Chod telling you to stop, but trying to run away in Team Colonel has a slight difference, just enough to show their personalities. Now for the folders. Both games actually follow the same folder structure. Each of them have 3 unique chips, and 6 copies of Cannon and Mini Bomb. The last unique chip depends on the version. In Team Proto-Man, you have the Electric type Thunder chip, and in Team Colonel, you have the Brake type Airhawk chip. So these tutorials are tied with Blue Moon's Aqua Soul folder for the fewest unique chips in a folder at 3, and Thunder and Airhawk are tied with Bubbler for the most copies at 18. The order of these chips are 2 copies of your Elemental chip, Cannon, another Elemental chip, and then Mini Bomb, repeated 6 times. But, and this is my favorite part, this tutorial allows you to go wild with these insanely powerful chips. You could have 8 Thunders on screen at once, which otherwise is only possible by abusing your Berserk Dark Souls auto battle data. And you could have 8 Airhawks flying around, although unlike Thunder, there's a bit of a buffer between how many will appear on screen at once. The funny part about these tutorials is that because of the chip order, there's a chance that people might pick up on the excessive Thunder or Airhawk chips if they open the custom window again. But since most people beat the tutorial in one turn, there's also a decent chance that no one caught it. Even if they did open the custom window again, they likely didn't notice. Finally, we have Battle Network 6, which has a total of 6 tutorials. Battle Network 6 changed the chip folder system once again, and truthfully, this is my favorite version of the system. Instead of restricting the number of chips by standard Mega or Giga classes, it's restricted by the amount of memory the battle chip is assigned. Before this, memory was only used to assign regular chips, so this is a fun addition. Basically, you can have 5 copies of chips with 19 memory or less, 4 copies for chips with 20 to 29 memory, 3 copies for 30 to 39 memory, 2 copies for 40 to 49 memory, and 1 copy for 50 memory or higher. Also, Mega and Giga chips aren't restricted by this limit. If a Mega or Giga chip has 49 or less memory, you can use multiple copies of it in a single folder. Of course, this only comes into play for version 1 Navi chips, since they're the only ones that fall below 50 memory. And no Giga chip has less than 50 memory, so you'll only ever be able to use 1 copy. But just imagine if Colonel Army had 19 memory. Anyway, the fun part about Battle Network 6's early games tutorial sequence is that you can complete it partially out of order. While you still have to fight all of the battles in the same sequence, you can choose to talk to other NPCs first, or wait until you're done fighting, or something in between. It makes no difference, and it's entirely up to you. If you try to run away, MegaMan will say, "Lan, you have to bust the viruses. This is no time to run away." And from the second turn onwards, he'll say the generic, "This is no time to run away," that he uses in every story battle. If you lose, Lan will tell MegaMan not to give up. These are the same for all 3 battles. When it comes to the folders, all 3 tutorial folders are exactly the same as they were in Battle Network 5. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So let's skip ahead to the cross tutorials. Battle Network 6's cross tutorials are a bit unique. Unlike the other transformation tutorials, these ones actually remove your Navi customizer programs. Or rather, it just ignores everything that isn't HP. This is more noticeable when you have first barrier up, like I did against Heatman. As soon as I entered the tutorial, my barrier was nowhere to be seen. Your buster stats are also reduced to 1, since the tutorial removes your buster upgrades as well. Although, it's easy to miss that in Gregor version, since Heat Cross naturally increases your buster power. The final piece of evidence is when you lose the tutorial, Undershirt doesn't activate, while it did in Battle Network 4 and 5. Speaking of losing, Lan simply shouts words of encouragement if you happen to get deleted. I forgot to check for the run dialogue in Aquacross's tutorial, but Mr. Match shows some of his classic personality when you try to escape his lesson. I'm positive that Shuko has a unique line. Speaking of unique lines, Mr. Match's tutorial actually breaks out of the text box. In one part of Mr. Match's spiel, you can hear the text counter continue even though the dialogue is all on screen. It seems to continue onto a 4th line that we can't see. Now for the folders. Both versions include 6 copies of Vulcan 1 Star, Widesword Star, and Minibomb L. The final remaining chip depends on your version. If you're in Falzer's Aquacross tutorial, you get 12 copies of Aqua Needle P. And if you're in Gregor's Heatcross tutorial, you get 12 copies of Fire Hit E. The chip order for these folders also follow a similar pattern to each other. They each are stacked with Vulcan 1, Widesword, Elemental Chip, and then Minibomb, repeated 6 times. Nice and simple. Now onto the Beast Out tutorial. I'm excited to show this one to you guys. It's been my favorite one to explore. I'll get the folder out of the way first, since there's a lot more to talk about. The folder you use here is the same in both versions. The chip order is Vulcan 1, Widesword, Cannon, and Minibomb repeated 6 times. Did you notice something? Yep. This folder is exactly the same as the cross tutorial folders, except they swapped out the elemental chips for cannons. That's pretty efficient. I gotta say, I played this tutorial 4 times, twice in each version, and I did not notice until I started looking back at the footage. And this folder also gives us another folder with 12 cannons. Now, for the more interesting parts. This section of the game also has a fair amount of cutscenes before we're thrown into the tutorial without warning. But since it's a significantly important part of the story, no one cares. And also, the cutscenes don't take place in nearly as many locations, so it feels much smoother. The scenes we have include the cutscene where Link Navi gives MegaMan the healing water and tames him, the cutscene where Dad and Lan discuss how MegaMan defeated the Psybeast, and the cutscene where Lan wakes up the next day and talks to MegaMan. It may just be me, but it also feels like it takes far less time to go through these cutscenes if you're just watching them normally. Just like the cross tutorials, your Navi customizer programs get ignored, and your HP is retained. This also means your Beast Buster is reduced to level 1. I get why they made that choice. It's much more satisfying to see how it works when its power is this low. In Falzer version, I actually had my attack stat at 5, so the battle would have been over too soon if I just held down B. While you're in the custom screen, you can't press up to access your Link and Navi's cross, and the cross menu is completely inaccessible in this tutorial. Which makes sense, since this is the only tutorial where you also have access to another transformation at the same time, so it stood out to me. There seems to be slightly different dialogue when MegaMan beasts out for the first time, and also, this is the only part of the game where MegaMan uses his beast out mugshot while he's talking normally. If you try to run away, Dr. Hikari will tell you to keep pressing onward, and if you happen to lose, something special happens.
Take a listen.
Did you hear it? That special scene uses the Doubt song in the soundtrack, which is typically reserved for more serious parts of the story. Combine that with Lance Panic, and it creates a pretty nice scene that no one's seen before. Speaking of unseen dialogue, did you ever play until Beast Out was cancelled? Because if you do, you'll find something very, very special. At this point, Dr. Hikari warns you not to use the Beast Out button and completely prevents you from using Beast Over. No matter how many times you try or how many turns you wait, you can't Beast Over until the tutorial is finished. It's also notable because this is the only tutorial that makes note of the transformation ending. The Soul tutorials just let the soul fade away. There's also no way to check what happens if the crosses get cancelled in their tutorials, since they need to be hit by an elemental weakness for them to break. But I imagine there's nothing for them either. While that covers everything in the Legacy Collection, there's still a little more to explore. I didn't have the chance to look at the Navi Change tutorial in MegaMan Battle Network 5 Double Team DS, but I'm pretty sure there's a standard folder like the ones we've seen before hidden in there. The same goes for Rockman EXE Operate Shooting Star. There's a tutorial where the game teaches you how to operate MegaMan Star Force. There are also a couple tutorials in the MegaMan Star Force series, but I'll check them when the MegaMan Star Force Legacy Collection comes out. Finally, there's one more tutorial that may or may not have a hidden folder. Apparently, there was originally going to be a tutorial for Chaos Unison, but it was scrapped during development. This would be the only tutorial to feature dark chips in a folder, and I'm curious what it would be like. Would it break the 3-limit rule for dark chips, or would it only have one of them in a folder? Anyway, what part of these tutorials stood out to you? Let me know in the comments, check out my Patreon, and thank you so much for watching.